Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile. This is the NiceHCK NX8, and this is the ISN Audio Neo 5, and these are my Honest Audiophile impressions. I want to thank NiceHCK for providing the NX8 for review, to greatly appreciate it, and I purchased the Neo 5 with my own funds, with support from the supporters of my channel through YouTube and Patreon and one-time gifts. So thank you very much for all that you provide to the channel. It helped to purchase the ISN Audio Neo 5. Alright, so the NiceHCK NX8. This will set you back $200 from your bank account. It is a 8-driver configuration. It has 1 dynamic driver, 6 balanced armatures, and 1 PZT. It has 19 ohms of impedance and 110 decibels of sensitivity and a frequency response range of 20 Hz to 30 kHz. The ISN Audio Neo 5. This will set you back $290. It is a 5-driver configuration. It has 4 balanced armatures and 1 dynamic driver. 26 ohms of impedance and 110 decibels of sensitivity and a frequency response range of 10 Hz to 20 kHz. Both the NX8 and Neo 5 come in kind of nondescript boxes. The Neo 5's shiny with blue. You get some specs here on the backside. And then the NX8, you get a little picture on the front. And then on the backside, you get some specs. The NX8, when you slip off the sleeve, does have a little bit cooler of an unboxing experience between the two. You get a little bit of branding. And then the very snug box opens up. And you have a little bit more branding with this little cover that slides off. And then you have an area for your IEMs to sit and some accessories. Now the accessories that you get with the NX8 all fit into this little carrying case, which is nice. You get some branding here on the top. It's a little bit on the large side, but nice and stiff, and it's going to protect the NX8 very well. Opening it up, and you have plenty of room for all those accessories. Of course, if you're going to put your IEMs in, you're going to have to figure out another spot to put those accessories. But you have a nice area here, and then a pocket up top. It's going to protect that NX8 very, very well. Other accessories that you get some paperwork, and you get a little cleaning brush. And you get an extra set of filters. Now this is interesting because these filters are identical to the ones that come pre-installed. They do not alter the sound at all, and in fact NiceHCK mentions that in their documentation of the NX8 that they are identical replacements. So it doesn't really make sense why they would have sent the same filter, but it does, I guess, matter if you somehow get the ones that are pre-installed super dirty, or they spin off and you lose them. You can replace them, and you can use alternate tips and filters. I did not do that because I review things in stock form, but you could maybe experiment with other filters available from other manufacturers. And then you get this nice carrying case that includes your tips. And you get 3 types of, like, the normal grape shape type tip, and they worked okay. I found that they were a little bit uncomfortable for me. They pressed just a little bit too far and didn't quite hit the ear hole quite properly. So I ended up using these silicone tips, which were just a little bit on the smaller side and fit me like a glove, and they were extremely comfortable. I didn't really notice a difference between the 2 tips, other than I got a little bit better comfort and maybe just a little bit better seal with those blue lined tips. Alright, so the ISN Neo 5, it comes in this box. Sliding off the sleeve, you get this little cover, and then you get an area for your IEMs to sit in a place for a carrying case. Put that to the side. That carrying case looks like this. You got a little bit of branding. Flips up. It is held by a magnet. It's a lot smaller than the one that comes with the NiceHCK. And then ISN includes a little cleaning tool, and a cable clip. And then you get 3 bags of silicone tips. I found that the green tips fit me the best. They are a little bit on the wider side. The other ones here, these red ones, are just like the ones that come with the NiceHCK, which is interesting. And then these gray ones, I did not care for the fit of the gray ones. They're a little bit more stiff and a little more shallow, and they just didn't fit my ears very properly. So I ended up using these green tips. You get small, medium, and large in all 3. Overall, the little carrying case holds everything very nicely. There is no pocket to hold tips, so you'll have to find somewhere to place your tips. So the build of the different IEMs. All right, so you have the NiceHCK. Let's talk about this cable first. The NiceHCK NX8 comes with an okay cable. I find that the ear hooks are a little bit on the flimsy side. They do not have a lot of tension. They do connect with 2-pin, and you get a little ring red and blue for left and right. The cable has this nice split with a cinch that does okay, but it doesn't really stay in place very well. So you have to kind of get it in place and maybe secure it on your shirt. Overall, the cable has a nice feel. It's nice and lightweight. You do have a 4.4 termination. You can also get it in other terminations if you so desire. Overall, the cable twists and turns. It's not very well controlled. It's nice and lightweight though, but I just find that the tension is not very good on this cable. But the NiceHCK cable is way better than the cable that comes on the ISN Neo 5. This cable is lousy. This is one of the worst cables that I've ever encountered in an IEM that costs this much. It is just atrociously bad. It does not stay connected to the IEM, and it just has no ear hooks, and it's just very thin and tangly and twisty. It's not good at all. You can get different terminations: 3.5, 2.5, 4.4. This is a 2.5, but it doesn't matter. You're going to change this cable. This cable absolutely sucks. This is by far one of the worst cables I've ever come across. It does have a nice cinch though. It's a little bit on the tight side and stays in place. That's about the only good thing that this cable has. This thing is atrocious, so I highly recommend swapping it. The cables that I used with the Neo 5 in place of the stock cable were the Dunu Lear Mini, the Effect Audio Cadmus 2, and the Rose Technics Golden Rose. Also used several others. I did find that I tried to match the sound that was coming from the original cable, stock cable, to the alternate cables that I used, so I would get a good experience of the sound of the Neo 5. And I found that these 3 reproduced pretty identical to the stock cable. All right, so the build of the NX8 is fairly nice. It's a little bit hard to see on camera, but they are purple faceplates and a little bit on like the starry galaxy type of design. Pretty cool to look at. A little bit on the thick side, not too bad. I find that the NX8 has a smaller shell design for the back. There's not any ergonomics. It's pretty smooth. A decent angle for the nozzle, and about average length for the nozzle. A little bit on the thick side here on the back side, but for the most part, it's pretty well built, and it actually fits me quite well, even though it has that smooth back. Don't normally find IEMs that fit me very well that are smooth back, but the NX8 does. They just snug in the ears. I find that the blue tips actually fit a little bit better for me and snugged in a little bit better. The other tips were a little too long and they would press on the where the hole was, and it just wasn't very comfortable. The angle and the length, it just didn't match up very well. But with these tips, they matched up very well, and I was extremely comfortable. They actually seal quite well, probably about 60% of outside noises being blocked, and the isolation of outside noises is quite well. It muffles loud things very, very good. Coffee grinders, vacuum cleaners, those type of things are quite hard to hear, actually. Very, very muffled. Loud things like people talking super loud, or a group of people, loud vehicles outside, those type of things also were a little bit hard to hear. Had to pop one out of my ears in order to carry on a conversation. So overall, the build of the NX8 is quite nice and rather comfortable. I can wear them for several hours before they become uncomfortable. The Neo 5, very nicely built. They do feel just a little bit cheap for the $290 price point, but being an all resin build, they're not bad. Plus, I like the purple color, and the branding is not too atrociously gawky. They are rather thick. They have a nice ergonomic back, quite small at the same time, and they're extremely lightweight. A very long nozzle and quite the aggressive angle. I actually find the Neo 5, when using a different cable, to be quite comfortable. They just disappear in my ears, and I have no problems whatsoever with comfort. Also, isolation of outside noises is extremely good. These are better than the NX8, which is a very good IEM when it comes to isolation. The Neo 5 is even better, probably 65% of outside noises being blocked. You are put in your own world, and you definitely cannot hear anything. And it is extremely hard to carry on conversations or to hear things going around. Everything is very, very muffled. And I can wear these for a day. No problems whatsoever with comfort. They fit me like a glove and just disappear in my ears, and I have no issues whatsoever. That ergonomic wing and that angle, it's like it's molded for my ears. Hours upon hours of listening, and you're in your own little world. As I said, isolation of outside noises is exceptional. Just replace the cable. This thing is truly annoying. So overall, the Neo 5 is very well built. It is, as mentioned, just a little bit on the cheaper side when it comes to the design of the resin shell. Let's put a different cable on here so you can see how it fits. We'll put the Rose Technics cable on. This is left, and this is right. And they are even more secure and more comfortable with this cable. I find that the Neo 5 is extremely comfortable to wear. The NX8 from NiceHCK is quite easy to power. I find that the 19 ohms of impedance and 110 decibels of sensitivity make the NX8 quite happy on whatever gear you use. You don't need a ton of power to make them sound good and get loud. They do respond to a little bit more power, and I find that they scale well with better sources. Overall, the NX8 was extremely content on dongles, DAPs, and desktop, and I found that pairing it with a more neutral and analytical sound really brought things out and kind of made them to be a very nitpicky worthy type of IEM. They did a very good job. Adding them into something that was a little bit on a warmer side and had a little bit more body was more pleasurable and made them a little bit more musical leaning. And I found that the NX8 did a good job of portraying differences in source gear, whether it was warmer or more cold analytical leaning, and I enjoyed it on both. The ISN Neo 5 also was very easy to drive with its 26 ohms of impedance and 110 decibels of sensitivity. I did find that the Neo 5 took just a little bbit more oomph to drive them than the NX8. And I found that the Neo 5 was also very good at scaling with different sources. I found that I preferred the Neo 5 on something that was a little bit more neutral, analytical, cold leaning. The Neo 5 is slightly warmer and a little bit more musical to begin with. So if you add in something that is a little bit on the warmer side of it, the Neo 5 became a little bit too lush and a little too full sounding for my preference, and so I preferred it to be on something a little bit more neutral leaning. I found that all dongles, DAPs, and desktop powered the Neo 5 just fantastic. No problems whatsoever. So how do these IEMs sound? How do the NX8 and the Neo 5 sound? Let's start with the NiceHCK NX8. I find that the NiceHCK NX8's bass is very engaging and very fun, but yet at the same time analytical. The bass has good impact, punch, and slam, extends nicely into the sub bass, and there's nice rumble and grumble. The mid bass and upper bass are well controlled, do not bleed into the lower mids at all. I find that the NX8 has a very well controlled bass, very nicely detailed and resolving. The bass has enough impact, punch, and slam, and it will keep the toes tapping and the arms flailing, but at the same time, it's not this really authoritative, powerful, and just driving it home type of bass. It has enough without being too dominant. I do wish at times that there was just a little bit more girth, a little bit more to the sound of the NX8 and its bass. Then you have the bass of the ISN Neo 5. I find that the ISN Neo 5's bass is a little bit more forthright. It's a little bit more powerful, and it has a little bit more of a body and a little bit more punch and a little bit more slam. It also has a little bit more just of that girth and just that overall fun factor in the bass. But yet at the same time, just like the NX8, the Neo 5 stays very well controlled, very detailed, nicely resolving. Both of them have excellent tone and timbre in the bass. I find that the Neo 5 may have just a little bit more of that naturalism because it has a little bit more body, a little bit more girth, and a little bit more power behind it. Overall, I like both of their basses very much, and I truly am impressed at how much details and resolution they provide and how accurately the tone and timbre is. Going into the mids, I find that the NX8's mids are very nicely presented. They have good air, nice space, and have just enough of a presence without being too forward, being shouty and aggressive. The NX8 does have just a little bit of energy around 2 and 4K, and I find that it has this nice presence about it. It kind of takes the spotlight, and it allows you to enjoy the vocalists and the instruments without being too forthright and too bold, but yet it has a little bit more of a presence than the bass. I find that the NX8's tone and timbre in the mids are exceptional, and it has this nice balance between having good note weight and being too full and too thick. Also, it does a nice job of giving you enough air and space and allowing you to nitpick and go, that's right there, that's right there, that's moving. And it does a good job overall of giving a feature that is more about the mids than the rest of the mix, without being dominant and forthright. And then you have the Neo 5. And I find that the Neo 5 also does a very good job with air and space and having a nice tone and timbre and good details and resolution in the mids. It is not quite as airy and open sounding as the NiceHCK NX8 is, but at the same time, the ISN Neo 5 has a little bit more body, a little bit more of a fullness sound, and a little bit more lushness in the mids. And in my opinion, the Neo 5 sounds a little bit more natural in that regard. It is not quite as detailed and resolving in the mids as the NX8, and it doesn't quite have that little bit of sparkle and energy and quite as much of the bite like the NX8 does. But both of them sound very neutral and natural and accurate sounding. I find that the naturalism side of it is more with the NE8 or the Neo 5, excuse me, and the NX8 has a little bit more of the analytical and nitpicky side of things in the mids. Both of them are excellent. And then going into the treble. The treble extends nicely on the NX8, and I find that it has a very good energy and sparkle throughout. There is a nice little bit of bite and crispness to it without being forthright, and it has very good control. I find that the NX8 has a little bit of an airy, more spacious type of sound, and unfortunately the tone and timbre is just a little bit on the light side. It still sounds very natural and accurate, but it doesn't quite have the body and the fullness that I wish that I had. It's a little bit more airy, and it at times can be a little bit ee sounding. Overall, though, the tone and timbre is quite natural sounding, and it has very nice details and resolution and stays very well controlled. The ISN Neo 5's treble is more controlled and has a little bit more naturalism than the NX8. I find that the Neo 5 extends nicely into the treble and has a nice slightly kiss of warmth. It's like a warm summer breeze when you're at the beach. It just has that airy, relaxed sound, but yet at the same time it's nicely detailed and resolving, and it has a well-controlled lushness. The Neo 5 is a little bit more musical when it comes to the treble. It doesn't quite have as much of the bite and the edge and the crispness that the NX8 has, but overall I find that it's a very non-fatiguing and very engaging treble that has a slight roundness and smoothness to it. The soundstage of the NX8 is quite wide. I was rather impressed at how immersive the NX8 stage is. You get this nice width. It does a really good job of portraying differences in venues, small, medium, and large, and grand. And the NX8 just does a really good job of changing between all the different venues. As you go through your musical library, you're going to notice all the different sizes. Also has very nice depth. It does a really good job of looking into the stage and allowing you to nitpick it. And then it does a really good job with imaging. Things move from side to side, cross over, and you can go, that's right there, and follow it. And it's very direct and specific, right, left, center, and it moves things along very well, tracks things exceptionally well. The NX8 also does a really good job with its layering and positioning. Everything has its own little place, and it doesn't get confused and jumbled up. The ISN Neo 5 also has a very nice stage. It's not as wide as the NX8. It's a little bit more close sounding and a little bit more on the natural side of things. At times, it can sound a little bit too small, especially on more intimate types of recordings. It'll sound a little bit too close. It does struggle at times with just a little bit of space, and things will kind of meld together at times on more busy, complex, and more intimate type of tracks. But overall, it does a decent job of showing you different sizes and venues, small, medium, and large. And it doesn't really go into that grand size. It just kind of gets large. Does a good job with depth. You can look into the stage very well on the Neo 5, and it is a very nicely layered. You can do you can pick things apart very well. Instruments and vocals have their own space. As mentioned, though, it can on more busy, complex type of tracks and a little bit more intimate type of tracks, it'll sound slightly cramped and maybe at times a little bit melding together. Tracking things across the stage, it does a very good job. You can follow things and pinpoint, and it does a very good job of being accurate. You can go right there and lock on and follow it across, and it follows things very well, and you can place them very easily. Detail retrieval and resolution of the NX8 is exceptional. I did not miss any detail. And in fact, there were times where I was going, wow, don't normally hear that. Oh, that's really good for a $200 IEM. And I was rather impressed at how well detailed the NX8 was. Resolution is fairly good. It does a really good job, especially in the bass and in the mids. In the treble, at times it can get a little bit glassy and glary, and it is just a little bit on the shiny side, just at times. It does a really good job of revealing flawed tracks, but also at times it can be a little too... I wish it was a little bit better, a little bit more refined and defined and focused. But for the most part, the NX8 is very, very good, especially for $200. And then you have the ISN Neo 5. And it is quite detailed, not quite as detailed as the NX8, but they are really close. And at times, I thought the Neo 5 was better, and at times I thought the NX8 was better. They're really, really similar and very close, but I do give the overall detail retrieval to the NX8. But the Neo 5 is really, really close. Resolution, though, the Neo 5 is slightly better. I found that the Neo 5, especially in the uppers, was a little bit more refined, defined, and focused, and didn't have those moments of glassy and glary. I did find, though, at times it will round and smooth things a little bit more, and so it doesn't quite reveal as well flawed tracks that'll kind of make it a little bit more musical. So depending on what you prefer. But overall, I do believe that the Neo 5 is slightly better detailed, or slightly resolving, and the NX8 is slightly more detailed. Tone and timbre. The NX8 is a very nicely tone and timbre IEM. I find that it has a nice accurate tone and timbre. You can differentiate between all instruments and vocalists, and you had no problems determining things within the specific families of instruments. If something was a woodwind, you could definitely tell, hey, that's a saxophone, hey, that's a clarinet, that's a flute. If you're in brass, hey, that's a trombone, that's a trumpet, that sort of stuff. You could also tell differences in percussions and all that sort of stuff. It had no problems whatsoever with its tone and timbre. I do find, though, that it is a little bit on the thin side. I do wish that it had a little bit more body and a little bit more weight to the sound, and things can be a little bit too airy and a little tee at times. But for the most part, the tone and timbre of the NX8 is very, very pleasurable and very accurate. I find that the ISN Neo 5 has a little bit more accurate tone and timbre because it has a little bit more heft to things. There's a little bit more note weight, a little bit more density to the sound. I find that it is a little bit more natural when it comes to especially reproducing strings and woodwind instruments and pianos. The Neo 5 was slightly better than the NX8, but both of them are exceptionally good. And I was rather impressed with both, but I would give the tone and timbre to the Neo 5. So overall, I really do enjoy the NiceHCK NX8. I find it to be an exceptional IEM. This is by far my favorite NiceHCK headphone that I have heard. It is very well tuned and very, very neutral and very analytical and very nitpicky. If you really want to enjoy your music and learn all the little details and pick it apart, the NX8. But if you are looking for something that is still neutral with very good tone and timbre and has exceptional detail retrieval and resolution, isn't quite as wide and airy sounding, I would go with the ISN Neo 5. I find it to be a very natural, organic type of sound signature and has a very nice tone and timbre. And I enjoy both of them, and I really have a tough time picking which one was better. It just kind of comes down to my preference and my mood. If I was going to do some monitoring and be using it as something for the stage, I would be happy with both. If I was going to use one or the other for mixing and mastering, I'd probably lean towards the NX8, but the Neo 5 can also do that. It's the Neo 5 with its a little bit better resolution may reveal things slightly better. So again, I'm kind of tossing and turning and tossing them up in the air and seeing which one lands. But if it comes down to which one comes with the better accessories and which one is more comfortable, again, tossing it up. I love the comfort of the Neo 5, but also the comfort of the NX8 isn't so bad. NX8 does have a somewhat of a better cable and better accessories. So which do you prefer? Something a little bit on the warmer, more natural tone and timbre, or something a little bit thinner, more detailed and resolving? I like both. This has been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Somewhere on the screen, subscription links, notification bells. If you haven't already, please check those off. Don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video. Check out all the links down below. There's all kinds of information regarding how you can contact channel, follow channel, support the channel. Speaking of supporting channel, I want to thank my supporters through Patreon and YouTube memberships. Thank you very much for all that you provide to the channel. It is much appreciated. If you are interested in supporting the channel, there's various ways that you can do that through one-time gifts, and you can do that with YouTube, PayPal, and Venmo, or you can do it with monthly subscriptions through Patreon and YouTube memberships. So thank you very much. If you're interested in supporting the channel, it'd be greatly appreciated. There are benefits to the monthly subscriptions, getting videos early, and also you access to private Discord lounges on my Discord server. Speaking of my Discord server, it is open to the public, so check out the link down below, and there's all kinds of ways that you can interact on that server and join the fun. Also down below, there's all kinds of other information regarding gear recommendations, music recommendations, gear rankings, all that sort of stuff listed down below. So if you haven't already, checked those off and check it out. And lastly, don't forget to enjoy the music, and that honesty is the best policy.